really happy.
All right, good evening, everyone. Call the meeting to order. It's the February 3rd, 2014, 7 o'clock regularly scheduled school committee meeting. I'll call the meeting to order. It is 7 o'clock, and would like to state that the meeting is both being both audio taped and videotaped, and would ask everyone to please rise and pledge allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, thank you. And roll call, please.
Rich Fitzgerald.
Jerry Mayu.
Gregory Thompson.
Smith, Superintendent of Schools.
Bill Fonseca.
Terry Olters, Assistant Superintendent for Business.
And we'd like to actually modify the agenda this evening, so Mr. Chair, if you have a motion.
Yes, I'd like to move on the new business 7.1 ELPS Health Services presentation. Move that to make it 5.1.
Thank you. Motion made.
I'll second.
Second, any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, no. Motion carries 5-0. Thank you. And we have some minutes.
I make a motion to approve the minutes of January 21st, which 2014 regular session minutes.
Can I say five? Okay, thank you.
Second.
Motion made, thank you, and seconded. Discussion.
Well done. Whoever did them, well done.
Just actually one was brought to my attention. Or was that? First page, second page?
Second page.
Second page, new business.
The new business, the last paragraph.
Okay. The vote?
The vote carried at 0. It should probably be carried at
401.
4-0.
Well, it says which one it's.
We probably
Well, I
should
guess-
take that last part out.
Or take it out, okay.
Yeah.
Okay, it's needed.
Okay. Okay, all those in favor of the approving the minutes, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, no. Motion carries 4-0. Thank you. And committee and subcommittee communications, Mr. Chairman.
Very busy couple of weeks. Attended a couple of high school sporting events. Bill was at both of them with me, and attended a collaborative meeting where we chose the Grin Spoon Award recipients. And Mr. Fonseca and I were busy with the athletic subcommittee where the athletic director gives an extremely efficient and presentation on the athletic budget and what it means, and we're going to continue this kind of discussion into the full school committee at some point. I also made my annual visits to the 5 schools, and it was just a wonderful experience being there, from the enjoying Elaine in the cafeteria to meeting student ambassadors at Maple Shade School. Obviously we all did the student projects at the high school. Meadowbrook, just a wonderful walkthrough, and also Birchland Park, the same thing. So very enjoyable seeing all the activities, the learning that is going on. Very impressive, very impressive.
Thank you. Mrs. Mayu.
I don't have anything, but I will, since Beth isn't here today, I will mention that E-Leaf is this Saturday.
Right.
And you can still get your tickets. I think they do want to have a head count, so if you're still unsure, I think they want to know like by Wednesday. So if you want to know, you could probably send a check-in with your kids or go online. And
You can do it both online at the eLeaf webpage, or if you wanted to send something to Mrs. Boucher, you can do that as well.
Thank you. Mr. Fonseca.
Like Mr. Fitzgerald said, attended a few winter sporting events. I kept running into my colleague over there. Very competitive, very good crowds, students are well behaved. Pleasant nights out, and as he said, athletic subcommittee, very good PowerPoint presentation was shown to us last week, and we will be continuing those discussions as Rich said.
Okay, thank you. The only other item is tomorrow evening, Mr. Smith and I are on the selectmen's agenda to talk about statement of interest.
Okay,
So,
Start with the process.
just want to let you all know.
Keep us updated.
Okay. Any visitors this evening? No, and we'll move on to ELPS Health Services presentation. Okay.
We have Ms. Lombard here with us, and she's going to walk us through a presentation, which gets set up here. Remove our high technology slide here. And
I'll write this down.
This presentation will give you an idea of some of the incredible work that happens in our health offices in all buildings, but it will also give you an idea of the breadth of work that goes on, not only on a daily basis, but I think we have yearly
Yes.
accumulation of stats and data.
Thank you very much for allowing me to come tonight. Never worked one of these computers, so. Okay. So, so this is East Long Meadow Public Schools Health Services Department.
Yeah, leadership team wants to go.
See, oh, it worked. Okay. So school nurses help keep students in class. They manage chronic health conditions, reduce the number of students dismissed for health issues, identify, modify, or remove health barriers to learning. The mission of the East Long Meadow Public Schools Health Services is to maximize the health and well-being of students, increase student readiness to learn by developing care that promotes student health and academic achievement, support student learning by acting as an advocate and a liaison between the school, the home, and the medical community. Functions of the school nurse, skilled nursing care and management, emergency care, health counseling and education, state-mandated screenings, monitoring of mandated immunizations, safety of the school environment, communication with community, and linkages to resources. So in 2012-2013, the population in the schools was 2,755 students. There were 26,539 health room encounters. 87% of the students visited the health room at least once, and that is not counting screenings. We returned 23,820 students to class. 1,596 were dismissed due to illness, 102 dismissed due to injury, and 1,021 other.
Mr. Lombard?
Yes.
Those visits, there are some students that have to visit every day for medication, is that true?
Yes.
So some students are, because of their situation, whatever it may be, regular visits of health.
Right.
So-
And you're going to see later how many medications
Why,
were
just
administered.
to make its way to help you.
Okay, so 20,626 were health maintenance, 4,773 were injury or first aid, 230 were mental or behavioral health, and 910 were other. These are the screenings that were done, 1,435 vision, we referred 146. Hearing, 1,207, and we referred 16. Scoliosis, which is checking the spine, 860, 3 were referred, and the body mass index, or the BMIs, 803. There is a new requirement for the regulation to the BMIs. We no longer are required to mail home the BMI results to parents of students in grades 1, 4, 7, and 10. Parents can opt out also with written notification. So 90% of the students were returned to class after health room encounter, which increases time on learning. 7,848 communications with parents, 3,677 communications with staff about student health issues, 5 EMS 911 calls for student or staff.
The whole year, just 5?
Well,
Sounds awfully low.
really? 4 mobile crisis unit calls.
Okay, no, I think it's athletics.
Right, no, this is not, this is during the school day.
Okay,
4 mobile crisis unit calls, 9 referrals to emergency health services. There were 82 suspected or diagnosed head injuries, 42 occurring during extracurricular activities. And because of the mandated requirements for the concussion protocol and policy, we know that we had 17 diagnosed concussions in the high school athletics. So 2,311 were scheduled medications. Doctors that ordered meds as needed, there were 822. Medications given per our school physician as needed, like our Tylenols, ibuprofen, 3,913. Nursing procedures and treatments, 890. Students with special health care needs, 22%. 200 healthcare plans, 56 504s. We have a fluoride rinse grant. 386 students participated in that. And that is run by all parent volunteers that are trained. Dr. Donald Shukan retired from his role as school physician on June 30th after 38 years of service. The health services staff revised the school physician job description. We sent letters to 4 area pediatricians that we were interested in, and we chose Dr. Greer Clark from Redwood Pediatrics as our new physician beginning this year. Dr. Michael Lemansky resigned from the position of the medical director of the ELPS AED program in June after 10 years of service. And Dr. John Santora, he's an emergency physician from Bay State, has agreed to be the school's medical director for the AEDs and also the town. So emergency plan. We have a total of 9 AEDs in the district. There's 1 in Meadowbrook, Maple Shade, and Mountain View. There's 2 in Birchland Park, 4 in the high school. All 5 school nurses and myself are CPR instructors, and our goal is to offer 10 free CPR AED trainings for this year. We also still have the Essential Schoolhouse Services Grant through Department of Public Health. We received $77,900. We partner with 2 schools, the Pioneer Valley Chinese Immersion Charter School in Hadley and the Munson Public Schools. They each receive $3,000 to enhance their health services. $44,150 goes towards nursing and the health secretary portion of their salary. $15,000 go to per diem sub-nurses. $11,550 is for program support, and $1,200 is to travel to DPH meetings. These are some of the items that we purchased with the Essential Schoolhouse Services Grant. The Hoyer lift and the sling for Maple Shade, the health room cabinets, fridge and countertop for Mountain View and Meadowbrook, side-by-side fridge for Birchland. We got a professional development speaker that came and spoke to the nurses, guidance, adjustment counselors, school psychologists. We pay the school nurses, instructor stipends. We purchased the mannequins, CPR cards, supplies, all the AED batteries, electropads, a recliner for the health room, and the concussion vital signs baseline testing that we do for high school athletics. We did a parent satisfaction survey. It was a professional goal last year. 100% of the ELPS nursing staff will foster a safe, nurturing, respectful learning and working environment, resulting in an increase in satisfaction by staff, parent, and students. We wanted to determine the extent to which school nursing services are meeting parent-guardian expectations, communications between school nurse and parent-guardian are effective, and nursing care is readily available for the student, especially in an emergency. So we had 100 surveys. We decided how many per the population of each school. I mailed home surveys to the first 5 students, parents in the health room over a 5-day period. We emailed them, and we also we mailed them home, and we emailed a survey monkey with a return date and return postage. We received 59 out of 100. All the information was entered. 98% of parents and guardians are satisfied with nursing care delivered by the health services staff. Yeah. These are some of the comments. My children have always received excellent care. School nurses rock. Nurses have been great about communicating when my child goes to the nurse. This was the child's first visit to the nurse, so glad to have a nurse on staff. The nurse goes beyond what she needs to do. She's a source of comfort and confidence. She treats my child with kindness and patience. She's easy to get a hold of, communicates well, and she called home to check on my sick child. So what did we learn? When alerting parents that the ill or injured child must be picked up, we need to always be respectful and courteous to working and non-working parents, and to maintain a current list of emergency contact numbers. Oh, I'm ahead of myself. Okay. Health services staff must be consistently objective, respectful, and courteous to staff, students, and parents. Health services policies protocol must be more accessible and easier to locate on the district website.
Kelly, how are you maintaining the emergency numbers? How are you getting those from parents?
Well, we use Redeker,
Okay.
so that's the most current list. We also have what's called an over-the-counter form that the parents fill out in the beginning of the year, and they put down, you know, their home, cell, emergency contact numbers, but we always check Redeker because if there's a change made during the year, it's usually there.
Kelly, if I'm correct, there was a health aide in each of the 5 buildings?
We now call them health secretaries.
Health secretaries?
Yes, and we revised their job description also. There's
One in each building?
the 3 big schools, the high school, Meadowbrook, Birchland Park.
Maple City, Mountain View?
No. So recommendations and changes. We're going to attend PTO presentations. We're going to educate about emergency procedures, concussion, new policies and protocol. We're going to provide health services information in newsletters. We're going to update the common communicable disease protocol, and we're going to educate everyone on when someone should stay home, whether you're a student, staff, and when you need to be sent home. We did add health services link to the district website on the column on the left-hand side, so it's easier to access. All the protocol and policies are there. Alert parents if a child continues to come to the health room for the same issue, which allows the parents to intervene and be involved in the management of care. Some of the activities where we really want to collaborate with the community, parents. There was a family fun night in February of 2013 at Mountain View. It was sponsored by the PTO, the Health Advisory, Food Services. We did a taste testing, Zumba, education. We raffled off 2 fruit baskets and an activity basket. Actually, February 11th, we're doing the same thing at Meadowbrook. We're going to have 2 one-hour sessions with 4 stations. We're going to do the same thing. We're going to give out do some education. They're going to go to different stations. And then we're going to do Zumba with Kelly Phillips, who's a Meadowbrook teacher. And I wanted to tell you about Mountain View's Teaching Garden. They received an eLeaf grant to purchase indoor tabletop grow labs, pots, seeds, and equipment. They just received another grant, and they're going to purchase the shed with the new grant money. The Massachusetts Agriculture in the Classroom also provided some grant money. The committee members are the school nurse Sue Thomas, staff, paraprofessionals, and students. And the purpose is to increase academic achievement, cultivate healthy lifestyles, and enrich social development. I want to thank you for allowing the health services team to share our data and our goals, and for the continued support you show us every day. Any questions? Yes.
Very impressive. And as an administrator who once had a building here with no full-time nurse, I know how valuable a nurse is. They lived without one for 2 or 3 years. Are nurses also involved in IEPs?
Yes.
Okay, so that's something which you could have added a slide. I mean,
Sure, I didn't want to make it too long.
No, I appreciate it. You've been very comprehensive in explaining all the nursing staff does. I think IEP is also a vital
Right,
part of
IEPs,
the
504s, sure.
It's actually an incredibly valuable part of
Exactly. Oh, exactly.
IEP
Yeah.
teams and 504 teams.
Exactly.
Now you have teams also around students who may have had a head injury. It's
Right, that whole concussion
becomes
piece.
almost unending.
Yeah.
Now, do you see an increase in the services every year?
Yes,
Certain times of the years more than others, too?
yes, especially August, September, yeah. And then, you know, reports, we do a monthly report every month to DPH, and that's where we get all these numbers. I'm actually on a CQI committee for field trips, and that is a project that we have to do through DPH. There's always, you know, it's always something new to do. We always strive for best practices. You know, we look at other districts. How can we improve? We all share. It's really wonderful. It is.
Yeah, I mean, especially with the advent of just the overall increase in concussions. I mean, even professional level all the way down. And it took a while before it hit this level, but I think it's very important that we have that concussion baseline assessment, so because we can't put these kids in danger. This will affect them in the future. And there's a lot of scientific studies that are coming out supporting that these kids,
Exactly.
you know, and we have to look out because their safety is first, and I commend you for the job that you're doing.
Thank you.
And actually,
Thank you very much.
to add to that, I think our nursing staff and probably nursing staffs across the Commonwealth were actually ahead, if I understand the history correctly, in reacting to the need for concussion protocol and so forth. The Department of Public Health requires certain things of schools, and physicians weren't necessarily trained until
Right.
the fall of this year or last year.
September of 2013, physicians have to have had the training to continue their license, and they also, on our forms, have to tell us where they received that training. Was it online? Was it, DPH approved? So it's really nice, because we've had our policy in place for 2 years.
And the skill with which our nurses have engaged Kelly at the lead of all that, physicians in different offices during the 2-year period where we were under certain mandates, but they didn't necessarily have the training, was pretty incredible, because almost in every case, we eventually got some type of collaboration and partnership with, which is what you want and need in those situations.
Some of the doctor's office are actually requesting our protocol for the concussions.
Good.
So. And Sue Lavoti, the school nurse at the high school, has been wonderful tracking all of this information.
And then on another note, going back to what you said too, I know that Kelly's also been in touch with like Colin Drury over at the rec department too.
Yes.
To make sure that they're up to date on all those policies.
It's important for the communication, yeah.
We also invited Zach Marowich, one of the physicians at the concussion clinic, to come and talk to the administration team and myself, just because we had to, we had a lot of questions, concerns.
Oh, yeah.
How do we get the child back to school safely? So that was very productive, I thought. Thank you very much. Okay, have a good night.
Yeah, I think so. Are we able to, Valerie, are we able to switch right into the next, or do you need to, should we cover that up? Okay. If, with your permission to move to the next item, we can move right into the budget presentation. Okay. We have our leadership team here. I think who will join this year at the table. Come on up. And in your package, you have a copy of the PowerPoint that you're about to go through. Ms. Lombard set the bar pretty high in terms of getting to an incredible amount of information very quickly. So we'll try to follow suit. But basically what you're going to see tonight and hear at different times from different members of the leadership team is everything we've developed during this budget development process that began back in November and will continue really right up until town meeting. And throughout this, we will get to what we feel as a leadership team are the identified needs that will continue to build on the progress that's made. Throughout all of that, we've kept in our mind not only the parameters of the town budget development process, but also just maintaining fiscal responsibility. So with that said, one of the things we want to achieve with our budget development is making sure that our students are college and career ready as they leave the high school throughout their education in the East Long Meadow Public Schools, and recognizing that we're now a rural community. Click on the next slide.
Oh, I'm trying. Oops.
All right. I'm faster than I thought.
There you go.
Google is sometimes tricky.
Just something that I say at this time, that the systems budget outside of direct instruction is probably the most strategic factor to impact every student across this district, all 2,700 students, so that they can reach their fullest potential, reach success, and allow the district to continue to meet its goals for all students. It's something to keep in mind and take very seriously. Last year, if you remember, excuse me, with the master plan development, we had that visioning exercise, and we really started to hone in as a district, recognizing that really pre-K through grade 12, we have to be giving our students the opportunity to develop and master 21st century skills. So what does that mean? Well, simply put, we have to make sure that throughout their schooling in East Long Meadow Public Schools, we're developing a critical thinking skill, that we're helping them problem solve. Most importantly, we're helping them collaborate. How do they work with others to think critically and problem solve? And then how do they communicate effectively, both in a written and an oral format? Just to give you an idea of where we stand comparatively, we have two different charts you'll see over the next few slides. One's the Lower Pioneer Valley Educational Collaborative, which has 7 districts, one of which is East Long Meadow Public Schools. It gives you an idea per pupil spending, because really, it still does come down to the more you can invest in your students, usually the more achievement and success you will see. So you see where the state average is, the dotted line here, and then you see that of the 7 districts in the Lower Pioneer Valley Educational Collaborative, we're roughly somewhere in the middle. We're actually starting, if you see where the orange or
I'd
red
actually say
line,
below the.
yeah, it's
I want to go below.
starting to go down,
Yeah.
and with only one district, this orange line being below us. So the green being Hamden Wilbraham, just went above us
Right.
with a few districts already above us.
I think it's
None of
almost,
those districts are at the state average.
I would almost say that it's safe to say that we are second from the bottom,
Yeah, 6 out of 7.
Right.
6 out of 7, and well below the state average. I think that's important to know.
Very important.
Well, now the other issue though is we're up over 5 years, 22%. The state average is only up about 10% or so.
Take a look at the gap
There's a gap.
where we were. We're trying to shrink that gap.
Right.
Is that normal though, the 22% over 5 years? How are we going to sustain that? I know we're all doing it, but it just seems like a,
Well, as
Going
you can
from-
see, we're starting to flatten out.
yeah, okay.
I mean, we don't have the peaks and valleys that other districts have had. We've been on a steady incline, but I agree, it is starting to level out a little bit, if you look at the whole chart.
And over the last 4, maybe 5 years, we have had significant increases in Chapter 70 to the town. This year we have an increase. It's not similar to years past. That probably also has a piece in the puzzle in terms of the increase over the years. But if you take it out a step further and go to the next slide, the district analysis tool on the Department of Education's website takes different statistics around different school systems and links you with what they feel are the most comparative, or can be compared the easiest with your district. So it does change periodically, such as we've just pulled in, I believe, North Middlesex and Wayland. Last year we did have Foxborough and Norton, and Hamden Wilbraham has been pretty consistent. Hamden Wilbraham is the only one that, at least on the state look from the LPVUC, is similar to us. So as you look across the state and you use the districts the state compares us with, you can see Wayland's far above the state average in per pupil spending, and North Middlesex is the bottom one here, and we're intersecting the blue and purple line there, which is Wayland and Norton. So, for example,
Hamden.
I'm sorry, Hamden
So
Wilson.
what's in, we look like we're 6 out of 7th again.
Right.
Interestingly enough, as they started this, talking about the more you invest in your students, generally the better achievement you see. Out of this group, Wayland has the highest assessment scores, and North Middlesex has the lowest assessment scores.
It's all relative.
So professional development spending. So you can see where the state average is, and again, we've come down, but one of the things that you can see a slight uptick there, and I think you'll see more of that as we continue to account for all the embedded professional development that we've been able to put in place through our instructional coaches.
I don't understand why it was so low. I mean,
Well, these are years, if you look at fiscal year '08, which is 2007-2008 school year, that was a year of pretty
that's when we were able to.
statewide drastic cutting. So that is generally what you see when you have cuts of any kind. Usually professional development is the first thing to go. Then we start to level off after that.
This is what the district spends.
Right.
This includes teachers who get reimbursed for the $600 they may use on a course.
Yes.
But
Also, any professional development speakers we bring in,
Right.
substitute costs, that type of thing. Anything that's designated substitute use for professional development, that would go into spending from
what about a teacher who presents to his or her staff?
you go to that.
Not unless there's an expense.
Like I said, if we pay the point rate where a teacher's presenting,
Right.
and that's what I'm talking about, the embedded professional
Right.
development, which is the model that we are using more and more of, and we think it's more effective. I think the better we get at accounting for that and really getting all the costs for professional development, I think you're going to see that start to go
But
up.
these are, folks, this is a very deceiving statistic. If you're out in the public, you're going to say, wait a minute, teachers aren't doing anything, they're not improving themselves? I mean, this is very deceiving. Our teachers know a lot of professional development, because we hear it all the time.
Right? They do it, and they're
In
incredible.
fact, some of them feel so overwhelmed with all
Right,
of being,
right,
all
right.
of doing.
And
So,
this actually ends in FY12. I mean, I think
Right.
FY13, you know, we've added coaches now, and now those salaries are considered professional development
They are,
salaries.
right.
So,
Okay.
And so probably if you had FY13 there, you would see an increase there.
I see, okay.
Which is the point I was making at the beginning, that you're going to start to see that move up.
So I'm just impressed with what I'm
Here.
hearing from the system in general, of all the people that are just really involved in professional development.
Right. What you're also seeing in this chart is not only the drastic drop-off when you're talking about fiscal year 2008, as you started the uptick, if you will, in the middle there, fiscal year 09, fiscal year 10, fiscal year 11, that's when we had ERA grants coming in, and we started to move in the direction where we currently are, where we're embedding as much professional development into the work year as we can. This is now looking at it from the DESE DART tool, so the districts with whom the Department of Education compares us, you have the state average here, where, again, you see the drop-off, or we're somewhere in the middle of the districts there. Now, this was an interesting statistic that we started to look at, and actually Mr. Bauer was able to dig it out. We were looking at the district assessment tool on DESE's website. Even though we're seeing per pupil spending somewhere in the middle or even on the lower end, our AP, we're doing a lot with getting our students into AP courses, and they score well once they enroll and stay with the course all year. So we're seeing that increase, and that's a real tribute to our high school staff and our high school administration to continue that.
That's very impressive.
Then what is all this doing, all this investment? Well, we're seeing that we continue to score at a high level in literacy. We've had a really focused concentration. Most of our instructional coaches in the district are coaches that deal with literacy. What we're seeing is we're achieving at a certain level, but we're really starting to be challenged to move forward with math and science. We're in the 80s as you look across. So that's an area on which we need to focus and probably put an increased focus as a district. A few years ago, we started to use the Renaissance STAR assessment for both math and ELA. And as you look across 2012-2013 school year for math, you see that we had nice growth as we went through the year. I don't know if any of the principals want to add.
Can you just remind me what grades this represents?
Grades 2 through grade 9. What you want to see is, obviously, you want to see down here urgent intervention. You want to see, as you go through the year, those reducing, and you'd like to see that step ladder, if you will, on the other end. So we did see that last year. I don't know if anybody had anything to add about STAR assessment or...
Just that from the first year that we gave STAR full-fledged, 2011, our mid-year assessments were 75 and 77 ELA and math. That was at or above. And you'll see as you go, when you get to the 13, 14, where we are mid-year now, we've already surpassed where we were when we first started. So if you look 3 years ago to now, you can see that we have made a significant jump.
I'm a little confused. When our math STAR assessment is much higher than the ELA, but when you look at the composite, first slide we saw, our scores are much lower in math than ELA. Do you see what I'm asking? There doesn't seem to be a correlation between the high math scores and the lower CPI scores.
This is grades 2 through 9. Many of these are not tested grades, so I don't know how easy it would be to make that correlation. You'd have to tease out just those tested subjects to see what that was.
Yeah, that would be, yeah, that's why I'm confused. You go back one.
I think it's
please?
like 3 that you have to go back. Yeah, go back 3 slides.
Right there.
That one is the one teacher.
Now, this
looked
is the MCAS,
Right.
Composite Performance Index, and the MCAS, all grades tested in the MCAS.
And CPI is
Okay,
different
so
than
what is the
percentile
grade 10
rate.
when we started, correct?
Right, grade 10
Grade
is
10 would
not
not be
the
the
start.
start display?
Well, it was last year.
Okay.
This is the first year we're just doing it with just ninth graders.
And these are CPI, this is reported in CPI. The STAR is reported in percentile, percentages at or above, a little
At or
different.
above.
Yes.
Yep.
Exactly.
Yep.
Exactly. Exactly.
However, what we use STAR for, and I think that's what you're getting at, is we want to make sure that we're consistently monitoring where our students are in their learning throughout the school year. And so we want to continue to move them forward. So that should then result in that CPI coming up, but reported out 2 different ways. This one we've seen, right?
No, this is this year.
Okay. So this is this year math scores. So at this point, we've done the September and the January assessment, and we're seeing some continued growth. That's what we want to see. We'd like to see that continue into the spring assessment, which will be coming up in May.
So in 2011, these scores would have been, this red score would have been 77 at the midpoint.
Okay, we're seeing similar type situations with ELA. So I don't know if you have the figure on ELA as well.
From 2011, it was 75
The high school, 75, thank you.
at the winter. Actually, at the end of the year, not mid. We were 75 and 77 at the end of the year. So this would have been, so we've already surpassed that.
So as we look at some of these initiatives that are moving our students forward, we continue to look across the district and work collaboratively to make sure that we're pulling all students, pushing all students, and putting all students in the best learning environment. So some of the things that we have over the last few years really concentrated on, I think it's in the next slide, are making sure that we expand academic coaching at all elementary grades and the middle grades now. Now, when I say that, middle school right now has the one instructional math coach. We don't have a math coach in our elementary grades. However, we have done a very good job of making sure that we have literacy coaches, and that's continuing to show results. Our student achievement data has been placed, and we continue to tweak this in a structured environment for each building. And it's unique somewhat to each building in terms of how they approach the data and how they break it down. Some of that's based on their own schedules, such as the middle school has a chance weekly in different meetings to look at data, where elementaries are always very creative with how they approach and put their teachers into a structured way of looking at data. And that's becoming easier. Some of that's because, and you'll see it in a few slides from now, what Mr. Bauer is doing with our data and how he's working with each one of the buildings. A lot of that's because now our teachers are very used to having the data at their fingertips regularly throughout the school year. Another big initiative that we feel has moved the district forward is that we now have a formal curriculum review cycle, and we have, not only is it a 5-year cycle, but we have actually an account line item where we can put money toward one of those years as the different departments who are within that cycle get to the point where they've analyzed their curriculum, they've decided where they see continued challenges and how they feel we can best support our students. We then, in one of the years of the review cycle, can allow those departments to purchase. And that's something that was new last year. Just to give you an idea, we showed you last year some of our professional development. This actually was a professional development, I think it was taking place at Mountain View.
Yes.
So you see some teachers starting to break out, and the colored charts here is actually Bloom's taxonomy. And so starting to look at how, even at the elementary level, we move up Bloom's taxonomy into more rigorous type activities and questions and so forth. You can see some of it down here, as you can see, applying and analyzing, and they're putting together these, they call them ladders. And I think they're in most of the
They're in every
classrooms.
classroom.
Now, this is where I would introduce Mr. Bauer so that he can start to take you through. Last year we showed you a brief snapshot of some of the structured charts that we're putting together for our teachers so that those data analysis meetings can quickly get started and accomplish something in an hour. That's not always been the case in education or in the East Long Meadow Public Schools, but we're getting there, and we're getting more results at the end of an hour because of some of the things we're doing. Mr. Bauer will walk us through this.
So what we're looking at here is a Google Doc. I don't know how familiar you are with that. A Google Doc is basically a web-based document. In this case, it's a spreadsheet. What you're looking at here is the top column, or rather the top row there, is a rubric. So this was happens to be an open response score given at Birchland Park. Each teacher has their own sheet. They're all saved in a central location, which is web-based, so it all has easy access for the meetings that he spoke about. And the teacher records the scores that they give the students on an assessment, an open response assessment. And so we've worked really hard on creating assessments that are aligned to our scope and sequence, aligned to the curriculum. And this is going to then provide not only a central location for data storage, but it provides an analysis tool so that teachers have something to talk about at their department meetings or at their grade level meetings. So this is just an example. This is the kind of document that gets created out of these Google Docs. In this case, this is just an example. This is grade level ELA growth, I believe at the high school, 9, 10, 11, 12. So the high school is given 2 open response scores this year. The blue is their scores on the first assessment, and the red is the score on the second assessment. So you can see each grade levels has improved. This is a kind of school-wide type of analysis, aggregate data. There's, as you can imagine, many different ways to slice and dice this. This is just an example of one of them. The next slide is an example of a per teacher. So not only can I look at, not only can the leadership team and the teachers look at aggregate data, but you, as an individual teacher, is able to summarize their data like this. And so you have timely access to meaningful data. And that is basically a prerequisite for the work that the principals have been doing around then improving the quality of the conversations that teachers are able to have. Yeah.
Any principals want to comment on data meetings and how structuring this has streamlined some of those conversations? I know it's different in each building.
Well, at the high school, we actually break it down by content area, so content area teachers can see how the students are doing in writing. And one of the powerful things is, so we get the teachers together, they look at the data, and then we go to the now what? What's the action plan? You've got all this information. What are some ways that you can improve literacy? And it's been really great because there's a lot of conversations about writing, which we typically only had in English language arts class, and some people might argue, and I've heard kids and parents say, well, why are you writing in a PE course? There's a lot of value to writing in a PE course because PE isn't just physical activity. There's a lot of other things like rules of the game, participation, health and wellness type of elements to it. So I think it's been really great because it's gotten our entire school focused around literacy and how we, as part of our learning expectations, how do we communicate both orally and the written form. So it's been very powerful for that.
And we're in the middle of our first data cycle, and it's been absolutely fantastic. The teachers are working really hard. So tomorrow we have the second half with all the core teachers, and we're really focused. A quote that I love about assessment is useless until it impacts instruction. So tomorrow we've analyzed all the data both on a school level, teacher, like a section by section level, and an individual student level. And tomorrow we start to write, teachers will be writing reteaching plans. And then just like Mrs. Flanagan said, today I went through writing data in one room with a computer teacher, an art teacher, and a TV studio teacher. And we brainstormed ways that all of them could sort of use their own voice and their own style to teach students how to use evidence and explain that evidence to make a point in an open response question. And then lastly, I would just say, like, it's kind of growing on its own now, which is so exciting as a leader. And for instance, my PE teachers requested that they'd rather sort of support math. So they've backed off the writing, and now they're working with the math coach. And they're going to be giving math ORQs based on sports, using fractions, assessing the data, analyzing the data with the math coach, reteaching, and then giving another one to follow up. So it's really exciting to see it get going.
Questions. So they're still, even though they're focusing on math, they still have to present it in a way that's written well and communicated in a way that whoever is grading that open response question has an idea of what they're talking about and how they got there.
Having the data well formulated and visual has really helped at our level too. We just had our benchmark assessments that the children have been doing, and we put that in a graph format for the teachers where they could see where they started and then where the children are now. And visually they can they can see the growth. They can group the children, regroup the children into reading groups, and then take that those children and look at their needs and plan what to work on next for individuals and groups together. It just makes the process of getting there much easier.
So what does this do as we continue to move students forward? Well, by the time they get to high school, we want them to be college and career ready as they're leaving high school, actually. And just to take a look at last year's statistics, some of which were just recently released in the paper, I believe. We had 90% of our class in 2013 going on to higher ed. We want to continue to see if we can increase that. 90 is a great number. We want to see if we can increase that. We saw on one of the graphics that our honors and advanced placement offerings have increased for students in all grade levels, I think, right?
Across the board,
yeah,
yes.
9 through 12. So graduation rate, 98.5%. Graduating 4 years, that's higher than it was last year. And our dropout rate has dramatically been reduced to 0.3%. So students are here, we're supporting them, and they're remaining to finish, which is so important. So, to do all of that, we have to continue to invest in our students. And the town has done that. The town, especially if you look in these years here, going back 5 years, fiscal year 2010, that was a budget, both fiscal year 2010 and 2011. I was not here, but they continued. It's always been, if you look at all those numbers, it's always been a positive increase, even if it was lower in those first years of the 5-year view here, 1.9%, 0.7%. And then the last few years, the town really has been incredible in supporting our students and helping us move all educational programming forward. We had 3.7%, 2.9%, and 4.1%. So these numbers here show that obviously everyone takes pride and is looking to support our students. And what our job has been throughout the development process is to certainly always maintain fiscal responsibility, but also make sure that all of you know here are the challenges that continue to remain for the East Long Meadow Public Schools. So as we look at fiscal year 2015, we've discussed over a few meetings that on December 5th, Appropriations wanted us to make sure all town departments put in a budget, a preliminary budget, back in January that showed a 1% increase to the overall budget. As we've continued to develop our budget and look at how we've spent and how we move students forward, how we spent this year and how we move students forward next year, 2.6% increase is going to be needed to reach level services. What does that mean? That means that when we increase our budget by 2.6%, it certainly is in the realm of where the town has supported us before, in order to make sure that everything we're doing now continues to be acted upon next year. That all our programming remains the same, that the different supports we're providing students we have for next year. That's level services. So it's not, there's no move forward, but it's making sure that some of the things that we have in place, all of the things we have in place that we feel are supporting students, continue into next year. That would be 2.6%.
Oh, sorry.
It's okay. Just if you want to pop back. So the thought here is, especially if we think of those graphs per pupil expenditure, in order to have continued student success, there really has to be continued investment. And I think the town certainly has done that. School committee certainly has always supported budgets that go forward and benefit students, and we need to keep that in mind as we continue through. Where do we begin with all this? Well, we start with our theory of action, where you've seen this before. We've tweaked it somewhat, where if we continue to strengthen the core instruction, right, what we do for all students on a daily basis, and we talk about the safe, nurturing, respectful learning environment, that's part of our district goal 3. If that can happen and we can keep our focus on that throughout the district, then we will be preparing students by the time they graduate who possess strong 21st century skills. Just quickly going through our goals, and some of those have been slightly changed and revised, and we feel the revisions help support students. We want to make sure students are receiving a standards-based instruction that's aligned with the Mass Curriculum Frameworks, that's transitioning over to the Common Core state standards, and that we're providing the interim assessments, some of which you've seen the charts on, so that we can monitor students throughout the school year, faster than just, okay, the spring state assessment, we get that result, some of it in the late summer, a lot of it in September and October. That's not fast enough. So that's where the district interim assessment and common assessments have come from. Our common assessments are the ones we've been building for years. And these are the ones we will start to use as the state looks for what they call district determined measures. So continuing along that line of thinking, goal 2 is around those district determined measures. And we're looking to start to build on the great work we've done over the last few years and make sure that we have these common assessments or district determined measures, and then we're able to administer them 3 times a year, especially in ELA and math, and that as we move up in the grades, that 6 through 12, we're developing these in all content areas. Someone had mentioned, I think Mrs. Flanagan mentioned, that we're looking for all our content area teachers in grades 6 through 12, and I think they're starting to have this mindset, if they don't already have it or hadn't had it in years past, that they are teachers of reading and they are teachers of writing in their content area. And that's ever so important. 3. We can never lose sight of the fact that if we're not providing and fostering a safe and nurturing, respectful learning environment, we're not going to have students or staff, for that matter, reaching their fullest potential. And then 4, as you're doing all this, district goal 4, we want to make sure that anything we do in terms of budgeting is somehow attached to helping students meet their goals and ultimately the district meeting its goals. So with that, I'll turn it over to the schools and you'll see some of the needs we've identified. Now, if you remember last year at this time, I talked a little bit about the fact that we had identified anywhere from 15 to 20 needs and initiatives which we could have presented. We were able to bring that down. This year, just based on that process and the skill of the leadership team, you're not going to see outlandish needs. You're going to see everything that's targeted at meeting those goals and trying to maintain fiscal responsibility and stay within those percentages you saw a few slides back. Let's start with you.
Our highest need would be to increase our a reading interventionist from a 0.5 to a 1.0 position. And we give a lot of support to students who need it. At our level, there's such a developmental range where students are at, and we want them all entering third grade on grade level. And in order to do that, we have to support them where they are in kindergarten all the way through second grade, which is the classroom teachers are doing a fantastic job at, but at sometimes we do need additional support, what we call a double dose, for students to meet success in reading and in math. And in order to do that effectively, we feel that adding really a half-time reading interventionist would really increase our abilities to meet students' needs. And what, it just all trickles down or up. If we work to get the students on grade level going into third grade, they're going to need less supports going on further all the way up through high school. And I think that's something that East Long Meadow has been very successful at supporting at the baseline.
Just mention, and Mr. Martin was saying it, that now we're able to identify so much quicker where students are in their learning that we can give that double dose, not only what they're getting in their literacy block in their home classroom, but more if right now they're showing that they've either flattened out or starting to regress. And that doesn't necessarily mean that that regression or that challenge will be there for the student throughout all grade levels. If we can provide that support in quick hitting, 6 weeks, 8 weeks type of support, often we'll see them make progress and they won't need that double dose for the entire year. So that's somewhat of a fluid situation. And of course, we're always looking to make sure that we're meeting the conditions for effective schools, and so adding in this area meets conditions 1, 3, 4, 7, 8, and 11 of those 11 conditions that the Department of Education evaluates academic programs on. Maple Shade and Mountain.
I'm speaking on behalf of both schools tonight. Michael and I have submitted this as our need, which would be a math instructional coach. We've had a literacy coach now. This is our third year with a literacy coach, and we have found the model to be very successful and effective. We'd like to expand that now to math. Math scores at the grades 3 to 5 level on both MCAS and our district assessments are consistently lower than ELA. They always have been. I know that it's a statewide trend also, but we'd really like to work on raising those scores in math. And we feel if we have a coach that we can share between the two buildings, like we do now with literacy, we'll be able to move in that direction. Someone who has a strong math background, who's made that their passion and their teaching experience, will be able to tell us what interventions we can use. You know, currently we have more interventions in reading than we do in math. We have more assessments in literacy than we do in math. So I just think that this would really be a step in the right direction. In my school in particular right now, although I can say in the beginning, adding a coach was something that was a little bit, the staff was a little resistant to in the beginning, they have completely embraced the model now. to the point where they're now even coaching each other in some ways that you wouldn't have, they may not even recognize. I started doing walkthroughs in my own building this year with the staff, and that expanded to where they asked if they could spend whole class periods in one of their colleagues' rooms to watch them do something that they felt they weren't particularly as good at as another teacher, and they wanted to watch how they did something, which is a huge step for teachers to want to invite people into their room to watch them and to admit, you know, well, maybe this person is doing a much better job at that than I am, and I'd like to see how I can improve. So I think with the math, we'll only get better scores on all assessments, and the kids will have a much better foundation moving into the middle school.
Actually, it goes to the point that you were talking about, Mr. Fitzgerald. You're seeing a lot of professional development that has not maybe traditionally been called professional development, because teachers are working together collaboratively and then building on their own skills or expanding their skills.
So this is a 1.0 position shared by the two schools?
Yes.
And Harley, yours was 0.5 to 1.0?
To 0.1, yeah, or 1.0, yes.
And then after this slide, you're going to have two requests that involve requests around special education. So we thought it was important to give you an idea of what special education across the district looks like, so that when the requests are described, you have a better idea of what that actually entails. So
this is a new slide.
It's a new slide.
Yes, it is, yeah. We
It's a
took
new
one of the
slide.
slides that was in there, we expanded it so that we could give you a better idea of what special education programming across the district looks like. And I know Dr. Welsh will be able to help me with all this, but just to give you a brief idea, it gives you the schools going down, including Meadowbrook and pre-K students, because our pre-K program, in essence, becomes the gateway to support and special education services for students coming into these public schools. So you see the number of students who might be receiving some sort of individualized programming or at least related services in that first column. And then as you go through, you see at least in the column there, it says number of inclusion students. The numbers in white are inclusion students, and the numbers in the parentheses are students who are simply receiving related services. I don't know if you want to...
Well, related services would be anything additional to help the student to access either the curriculum or the life of the school. So an example of a related service would be physical therapy, occupational therapy, augmentative communication. And as one would envision, the numbers are higher at the lower levels. That's just based upon developmental needs. Special education does include a diagnostic category called developmental delay. So that we are able to work for students. Just to remind you, at Meadowbrook, you know, we are providing services to 3- and 4-year-olds in addition to school-age children. So the numbers in white would be students who receive, I guess, what you would call academic services or combined services. Some students only receive related services, and those are the students in black in parentheses. The fourth column, which are the number of students in substantially separate programs, I think is fairly telling. Those are students in our own programs in the district, programs like the Learning Center, the Autism or Life Skills programs, the transition programs. If you total up that column, you'll see that there are 95 students who are receiving services in our district who could quite possibly have been placed elsewhere. The number in parentheses in that column, the fact that they're all twos is really a coincidence, reflects the number of programs in each building.
And programs aren't necessarily the same. Right.
Correct, right. That just, you know. And then the number of special educators, refer to teachers who work, again, with that third column, because it goes to say that within each substantially separate program, we have a special educator. So the last two columns refer to the white numbers in the third column.
So it gives you an idea of the caseload. The special educators who are not working within a substantially separate program are in that second to last column, going left to right. And then it gives you the idea of the caseload that our special educators are handling at each level or in each building as students move through our system.
And just really quickly, again, talking about developmental needs of children, you know, there's a substantial difference between what the special educators are addressing in each of those levels. Some of the special educators at Meadowbrook, for example, are still toilet training children. At the high school, our special educators are required to have some level of facility with all of the curricula that are taught here. They're much more academic in nature, so there's a real diversity of skills. And then at Maple Shade and Mountain View, they're still working on acquiring literacy and mathematical skills. So there's a real diversity there of service delivery.
And so that diversity probably leads to the different size caseloads?
Yes, very much so, very much so. And again, if you look at the lower levels, initially, you might just be providing related services, but then later on, as children begin to access more academic curricula, you maybe start to see the relationship between some of those struggles.
That gives you an idea of programming across the district. Going on to needs. So our first one is at Birchland Park. I'll let Dr. Allen explain.
Yeah, so at Birchland Park, I noticed, especially in the first few months, that we had some students dealing with some social emotional issues that we were really having trouble working with and didn't really seem to have the right services to provide them what they needed to succeed at Birchland. Working with Dr. Welch pretty closely, I don't know what kind of numbers I can give, but we had a few students in my first few months at Birchland who ended up being placed into programs out of district. So when I started reaching out to the elementary schools, I learned that I know at least some of them have the transition program, Transition 1, Transition 2, which is a classroom that really provides that social, emotional, and behavioral support. And because they have this special classroom where they're able to get the support they need, they're able to stay in ELPS and stay in the schools where their peers are. So Dr. Welch and I started talking about that, and I just feel it's something that we could provide at Birchland Park. I had some students that we were very sad to have to place elsewhere this year that I think if we had the right system in place, they could have been successful at Birchland. So you know, I look at this as a need and certainly something that would help keep more of our students within Birchland and help further some of them that still are there. But at the same time, financially, it might be one that pays for itself because I haven't run the numbers myself. But when you start sending students out, I know that can be quite expensive.
Dr. Walsh, you anticipate, if this were to go through, you anticipate that some students might come back who are outplaced now?
Absolutely. It's a really challenging decision when you think about placing students in programs outside their home community. I think we've shown, if you looked at the previous slide, our commitment to educating students within the district. This has always been the area that I would have identified where I felt we were not as strong as we are in other areas. At Meadowbrook and at Mountain View, we have programs for students in grades kindergarten through 5 who don't exhibit what I am going to call conduct disorders. That is, disorders that impact the learning of other students and the safety of themselves and other students, but who have behavior that's related to their disability that perhaps interferes with their ability to learn or with the learning of others. And those programs are very successful. We have some behavioral consult. We utilize some of the resources that we already have in the district. For example, at Tim's school, he has an adjustment counselor, so we can access services that we already have. And as you know from having, been here, what we've tried to do is to have our program numbers grow as the students progress through the continuum. This would be a really advantageous time to do that. I looked at the numbers of students that we are sending out for those reasons, social, emotional, and behavioral. And I think Superintendent Smith, with the exception of maybe 2 of them, all of them were in either middle school or high school. That's a very difficult age. I think some of Kelly's referrals and nurse's office visits tie into that. We also refer a significant number of students every year for assessment at Bay State in the partial day program or the partial hospitalization program. And I would love, the idea of maybe having a program in district for some of those adolescents where maybe we could triage a little bit and develop a plan to get them back in the classroom.
Probably your first line of success would be having students who are coming up from the elementaries captured there.
Yes.
I think the next challenge would be if we have this in place, then in those team meetings, starting to present it as an option. I think certainly continuing allowing students coming up from the 5th grade.
Is that what's happening now, those students that come up from 5th grade that now get the bird slip?
It's not a situation where they immediately are outplaced, but what happens is, and I think Dr. Allen was referring to this, is we work with staff that we have and we try to work with programs we have, but it almost becomes an individualized program with that student where you're taking pieces of other programs and expertise of other staff members and trying to put it together and hoping that it will work instead of having a combined program.
Valerie, Dr. Welch referred to the last slide.
Yep.
So we're talking about some of them that are outplaced necessarily now?
Right, and they're not reflected on, they're not,
Okay.
They're not. But I can tell you that we send, full buses to some of the programs that deal with students like that. Because we really don't have the option for the staffing that can give that immediate support.
Right.
That's really interfering with students' learning.
Terry, can we relate a cost to that? Is there a way to?
Oh, I can do that, sure.
Or show what savings we can have by having this in district? But also if we send out of district, do we then apply circuit breaker funds?
Well,
not always.
Apply circuit breaker to in-district or out of
Right,
district.
yes.
Once they reach that 4 times the state average, which is somewhere around
And we can calculate that within the district, even if we keep them totally.
Yes. Yes. And remember too, Mr. Thompson, that we're not only talking about tuition, but we're talking about transportation. And we're also perhaps talking about a related service, because it's not a good use. Let's say we have a child that's placed at a school such as Valley West, which deals with issues like this, and that child requires speech and language therapy. It's not a good use of our in-district therapist's time to travel, provide the service and travel back. So that's an additional cost, a contracted cost, in order to make sure that we're following that student's IEP. So there are, on top of the tuition, there are other costs as well. If at any time you would like me to put some of those numbers together, we can do that very easily.
This one specifically, we briefly talked about it prior, but it makes sense to do it. I don't know why we might not just do it. I don't know why we would.
I'd love to.
If, you'd have to continue your vision all the way through grade 12 too, so you'd eventually be looking to have a program at the high school as well. Whether you do that next year or whether you do that, if you're going to be bringing students back, especially, you have students who might be in grade 8, and the following year they'd be transitioning to grade 9. So you want to think, that's something that's got to be part of that strategic plan. Moving on to the high school, if you take a look at, if you remember that slide, as we got to the high school and as you go up through the grades, you're seeing caseloads increase. And so especially as we expand into more inclusion-type settings, I'll let Mrs. Flanagan talk or speak to that, we're asking a lot of our special educators.
So as we keep hitting home tonight, our business is getting kids ready for college and career, and that means all students. So we take the job of educating all of our students very seriously. One of the things when I came on to the high school 2.5 years ago is we had an RFL model for our special ed students, which primarily was a separated classroom setting where they would receive outside of the classroom, tutorial type of skills were being reinforced. And we felt that it was really important to provide our students the least restrictive environment was to get that kind of training into the classrooms. So what we've moved to this year is an inclusion model in which our special education teachers, and we only have 4 of them, are now being placed with general ed teachers so that there's real-time support for students. Teachers can collaborate while they're together. There's a lot more communication between the teachers. And so that's worked out really, really well. The problem is that we only have 4 teachers. And so our official inclusion model right now only covers 9th and 10th grade ELA and math. Now, we've been able to, fortunately, look at our schedule and place paras in some of the settings, like in the Algebra 2, the 11th grade, but we really do need more support. As you can see here, our average caseload is at 30, it's actually 33. And I would argue that if you compare that to the other schools, particularly the middle school, we are doubled in terms of that caseload. And when we say the word caseload, there's a lot that goes to that. Our teachers are not only now co-teaching in the regular ed classroom and working and grading assessments and helping the general ed teacher, but they're also writing IEPs, they're also doing coordinating testing for our students, they're coordinating communication between the parents. There's a lot that goes on.
Meetings.
And what's that?
Team meetings.
Team meetings, and that is a lot. And our special ed teachers are really feeling that weight, and so we'd like to give them that support. The other thing that's really important to point out with the high school is our Learning Center model only goes to 10th grade. So these students are within one classroom, 9th and 10th grade, pretty much primarily, and then 11th, 12th, they're kind of go out in the mainstream or they have RFL. So we don't have support for Learning Center beyond that, which is something I think we really need, because I can think of at least 2 students that could have really benefited from that this year. So as our inclusion model starts to demand more of our special education teachers and we expand the services that we have at the high school, we really do feel that we do need to add an additional teacher to meet the needs of our students.
If I can just add one more thing to what Principal Flanagan was saying, we have a mandate in special education to provide what are called transition services, which are services preparing students with disabilities for post-secondary experiences. And we are required to begin to provide those transition services and transition planning to students from when they reach the age of 14. So we are required in special education programming and in writing IEPs, not only to prepare students for post-secondary education, however that might look, but also for community experiences and independent living experiences. With the current, staffing the way that is, I think we do a very good job on post-secondary education. But our opportunities to spend time connecting students to their community or even assessing what their independent living skills are is pretty challenging. And that's a mandate. That's not something that we would like to provide. It's something that we're required to provide to every student who has an IEP. And while the 4 special ed teachers do their best, and while we have resources in place in the building, which are very, very strong, it's a challenge sometimes linking the child or the family to those services to develop the kind of transition planning that I would really love to see. particularly since, some of the data for students I have to do a study every summer, with a particular graduating class of students who have exited high school at a certain point, and what are they doing, and did they stay in college, and how many times have they changed jobs, and so forth. And if we could be as proactive as possible in addressing some of that, I think we'd really be doing a great job preparing our students for college and career.
Thank you. And then our next identified need is also at the high school, and it's an additional math teacher. This is something to speak to that.
Go to the next chart. The chart. So this is just giving you a breakdown of the current class sizes at the high school. As you can see, the left column is all the math courses for 9th and 11th graders, and then to the right is the 12th grade selections. It's really important to pay attention to the courses that the general population of our students are enrolled in. So the Algebra 2, as you can see, we're hitting the 28 mark with that. Geometry 26, 23. Our Algebra 1 honors is at 28. And if you go over to the right-hand corner, or the right-hand column, you'll see the pre-calc is at 27. And so forth. And as you all know, we have now made it a requirement to have, following Mass Core, I should say, to have 4 years of math. And what we are feeling at the high school is a little bit uncomfortableness in the numbers of primarily our level classes where the general populations of our students will be attending. As you can see in the middle there, the average class size, average out right now, is still 24, but I think it's really important to pay attention to those classes where the majority of our kids are enrolled. This past year, we had 184 out of 207 seniors take a 4-year math. We have 211 rising seniors. Dr. Allen and I are right now in the process of working on the transition from Birchland to the high school, so we will have those numbers. So we will have a better idea of how many kids are going to be taking the Algebra 1 and the geometry classes coming from Birchland. But I think we're at a point where we're kind of saturating those classes where I think those kids need the most support, and those numbers need to be as low as possible. We have had parents call and say, that seems like a lot of kids, and I would agree. When you start hitting 25, particularly in a core class like math, where it is so specialized and requires so much analytical thinking, I think we could only help our students by trying to decrease those numbers in some areas.
But Ms. Flanagan, is it fair to say that this 4th year of math is state mandated?
It's, I don't know if you want to comment, but it's the Mass Core is, yeah.
You have to have it, if you remember last year during that presentation, for students to be eligible for admission to state universities. Mm-hmm. That was not only their expectation in the Department of Education, it's part of their Mass Core graduation requirements.
So we're going to have to find another 4th year then for the difference from the 184 to the basically 211.
Right. Right. And
so have that more.
And if you recall, last week when I was here, we were moving that inductive reasoning course where you see there's 25 kids. That was typically a lot of the seniors would take that course right there. And so, you look at the honors levels course, and obviously we want to push more kids into those courses, but we always have to have placement for those kids who are, just average kids that don't go down that track. So as you can see here, that class right there is jumping up. And then the pre-calc is at 27.
Okay. Now, what part of our process we went through this year is as departments and buildings were identifying needs, in the Google form that they filled out, they identified which were the first tier, if you will, priority needs, and which were second priority needs. And so that's what you're seeing reflected here. The next few slides will talk about some of the second priority needs. And this one is at the high school, and it's dealing with our guidance counselor. I'll let Mrs. Flanagan speak to it. We have one guidance counselor who's dedicated just for freshmen.
So, as Mr. Ficero will remember, last time the NEASC Accreditation Committee was here, they dinged us for not having a full-time ninth grade counselor. I can't tell you how important that is, particularly at the ninth grade when our students are transitioning from the middle school. Currently, Ms. Ellingsworth works 3 days a week, and it's just not enough. When you think about it, she's got 220 kids on her caseload, and there's often times where we're telling kids, oh, you can't see her today. You're going to have to come back, you know, on the days that she's here. We're doing a lot more with freshman transition programs within the school day, so she and I have been working with Dr. Allen as well, getting ready for the 8th grade night and some of the transitional programs that we run in summer during the day. And I just think that, particularly for the freshmen, it is so important for them to have an adult that they can go to at any time to connect with and really develop a lot of those things that happen to kids during their 9th grade year. So it is something, again, that's been emphasized with the NEASC accreditation, and we're also hoping that you know, we can use her to be a little bit more proactive and more involved in some of the developmental programs we have at the high school.
Okay. And then our next second priority need is something that's district-wide, and Ms. Olajars is going to speak to this, and it's around transportation, specifically around getting some assistance for our transportation manager.
So basically, our transportation system operates from 6 a.m. to 4:30 p.m. During school days, and then in the evenings for sports, weekends for sports, and we have a pretty robust summer school program.
We sure do.
And so we have one transportation manager who works very hard and is very good. And she is at the bus yard at 6 o'clock in the morning, and she works very diligently. She does all of the routing for the buses. She answers phone calls from from parents, teachers, does field trips, you know, all of the above. She leaves now at 2 o'clock p.m., which gives her, you know, a reasonable day. She keeps her phone on in case there's emergencies, but lots of times now it's the superintendent and myself who are answering calls and handling the crisis of the day that might be, you know, the bus is late, my child's not home yet, so trying to figure out where the bus is. You know, sometimes there's a little bit more of a serious problem. The thought is to have an assistant transportation manager that would be available in the afternoon maybe to help handle those questions, to help deal with a lot of the paperwork. The transportation manager also supervises and evaluates 21 bus drivers and substitutes. So there's lots of paperwork involved in all that. She does training of bus drivers. We've just hired a couple new subs, and she's out on the road training those drivers. And when we are really short of staff, she gets in the bus and drives. So this is really a needed help. You know, it's just put in for a very small, you know, part-time position to at least help with some of that time, give some relief to everybody. We've talked for a while about putting GPS on buses, and if we were to do that, you know, we'd need somebody in the afternoon to be able to access and see where that bus is, you know. And right now, you know, certainly I would be able to do that too, but it just would be so much help to be able to have that kind of support for all of our kids on buses.
And can you define part-time? Is it, you looking at 0.5 or 20 hours a week, or?
Probably under 20 hours a week.
Under 20?
You know, at least to start, you know, so that it would be
Really,
reasonable.
from 2 to 5 time frame.
Right, 2 to 5.
2 o'clock to 5. And our transportation manager now often will leave here and go to the yard first to deal with situations there, and then we keep her phone on. So she still may be rerouting buses because that's part of the agreement is even though her day now is shortened into the 8-hour window, she helps us troubleshoot and get out and organize buses. And she also heads over to the bus yard, which you actually need to be in both places. You can't really operate the entire transportation system without having a presence in the yard itself. And you also need someone at central office handling some of the software we have, which helps us reroute and do certain things that we do for the buses, not only on a yearly basis, but sometimes we have to reroute if we're short drivers. Okay, moving. A few identified challenges as we continue forward that all all budgets need to take into account. We're still dealing with unfunded mandates, things such as, district determined measures. That's a mandate. We've been working on common assessments for a number of years because that's good practice. Now, as you expand that and you present it to the Department of Education as your district determined measure, the collaboration, the development, the professional work that's going on, the materials that are needed, all of the above, none of that's funded by the state, but it's something that's being required. Technology renewal, that's something we work very closely with IT on, but it's not something that we can ever keep out of our focus. Everything we do these days requires technology and a solid network. Mr. Bauer was presenting earlier in the evening around a lot of the work we're doing in Google. That's our collaborative platform right now, and teachers really have taken to Google. The challenge often is if we have a building or multiple buildings trying to access that collaborative platform and work with some of these data sheets, often our aging machines can't handle that all at once, and so it takes a frustrating amount of time to connect. With that type of thing, then your success rate of having teachers want to come back and do this type of thing diminishes. So that's something that we're working very closely with the IT director. And technology renewal actually comes through the capital request through the IT department, but it's something that we need to be aware of. It's, depending on where that line item is in capital, it's a challenge that the school department has to be thinking about. We have coordinated program reviews that actually have been ongoing and really kicked off to a higher level today. We're having a review on civil rights, English language education, special education. Our Title I programming will be reviewed later on in the spring. We also are having a less formal review of our fiscal procedures. The Department of Education is going to come and do that later on in the spring as well. When you have those, regardless of how formal or informal they make them, there are reports and there will be things that we need to do as a district to make sure that we're meeting the areas that they say currently we're not meeting. That will be labor and probably will have a cost to it, so we have to be aware of that. District contracted services, that's not only services that we bring in for students who may be on IEPs, but it's also things like our legal costs and other contracted services that we utilize around the district. And those generally do not go down. They generally have some type of percentage increase. Fuel, as everyone knows who fills up their own vehicle, consistently seems to be increasing, and we have a bus fleet of roughly 21, 22 buses that also is aging, and so keeping those on the road and servicing our students. We've been talking earlier in the budget development process about not only our master plan, but all the capital projects that we need to be thinking about and hopefully will start to be acting on through the capital process. However, if we're not acting on those, it falls on the school department and, to a certain extent, the Department of Public Works to keep the buildings functioning. And with that said, our custodians do an excellent job, and so we need to continue to make sure that they have the proper supplies to keep our buildings going. And athletics, which hopefully people can see, it's a little bit below the table line. Those costs, we have, I want to say, well over 700 student athletes. If you think of all the participation, some of those might be, some students might be participating in more than one sport, but the cost to keep an athletic program that is quite successful going is increasing. So those are challenges that we know as we look at 2015, we have to continue to finance going to meet for this budget. So, as we've gone, you've seen this slide, but now we're beginning to hone in on what 2015 may look like. We have delivered a 1% budget parameter, preliminary budget to the Appropriations Committee back in January, and identifies the difference, if you will, between level services, keeping all programs moving, all programs as they are this year, and keeping our students engaged in those programs. That's 2.6% increase. The difference between those two is roughly $447,000. Now, what we've shown you tonight, we feel in a very fiscally responsible way, is our identified needs that will help us continue to move the district forward and students forward, and it's an increase of 3.8%, which does fall within the range that the town has supported the schools in the last few years. So it brings us back to the idea of continued student success needs continued investment.
Along with that slide, we have returned money to the town starting in 2012.
2012, yes, 2011. 2011, we returned to the town at the beginning of the year with our ERA grant. We identified roughly $255,000 that we were able to, through that grant, designate as money that the town could use for benefits for educational employees. At the end of that year, I believe it was around $95,000. At the end of that fiscal year, 2011, we were able to give back $95,000. 2012 and 2013 has been a little bit more modest, somewhere in the range of, say, $10,000 or $5,000.
But it does demonstrate that we are staying within our budget, including contractual terms, special education costs, contracted services. We are staying within our budget, and even more so, returning money to the town.
Right. Okay. And just to give you an idea of where we also find additional support, this was mentioned earlier, but I don't think it was had the detail behind it to make sure that everybody understood what we were talking about. We do have a circuit breaker account that the state really sets up, and it's always after the fact. It's money that if you have shown that you have spent 4 times, greater than 4 times the statewide foundation budget on a specific, or supports for a specific student, you can claim that through the circuit breaker process. And you can see through the different years what the state has funded it at. Reimbursement is roughly 75% of those costs, anything above the 4 times. However, the state has not always funded it at a level where you can get 75% back. Last year actually was the first year where they provided 75% reimbursement. Next year, they have level funded it, at least the governor's budget has level funded it. So technically, that's 75% reimbursement. However, if everybody's requests for reimbursement increase, what you're getting back most likely will not be 75%. Because the money that they've established for circuit breaker, at least in the governor's budget, is level funded. It's the same money as this year.
And again, that's students in district as well as students who are out of the district. It's both.
And then going into a slide. This is a little harder slide to read, and I'll let Mr. Lodgears walk you through it, but certainly the budget, the operational budget isn't the only source, and so what this does is give you an idea of where all the different financial or fiscal support for our students comes from.
Right, and that's why we call this the whole picture. It really is, you know, a slide that shows in full disclosure and transparency all of the sources that it takes to operate our school system. Our budget is just a portion of that, and we also have had agreements over several years with the DPW and the IT department. So part of those budgets now, we don't have that money in our budget anymore. It comes out of those 2 budgets, so that's part of what goes to operate our budgets. We have state and federal grants, early childhood grant, Title I, full day kindergarten, essential health services that Kelly Lombard spoke about. We have the MECO grant. We have our big 240, the special education grant, which pays for a lot of tuitions. We have the 140 teacher quality grant, which pays for a lot of professional development. We have our circuit breaker that we talked about. We also have revolving accounts. We have a couple of tuition-in students that helps to support some of those classrooms that we've heard about tonight. We have the kindergarten tuition revolving account, which is helping to pay for those modular classrooms as well as paying for some teachers and apparel this year. We have the athletic revolving where we deposit funds and gate receipts, which helps to support that program. We have the transportation revolving fund where all of the fees that are collected are housed in that account, and we charge some expenses to that. And we also have the school lunch revolving account, which is a self-supporting program that we do not budget anything for, so that is a good thing. But it is part of what helps the schools operate. And so when you look at that whole picture, it really shows a much bigger, complex operation that the school district really is. And I can't read those numbers up there.
But this whole picture, does it represent the needs also?
This budget is, no, this is the level services budget.
Yeah. So, just from my vantage point here, it looks like somewhere around $31,807,000 when you add it all together at the bottom. So, there is, as Terry said, there's a lot more than just the 27 million, that 27.9 million that sits at the top in our FY15 proposed budget. And I think it's important that people realize that there is a whole lot more to educating the child today than just, contracted salaries and contracted services.
Terry, what's the tuition revolving? The first one?
Well, there's actually a couple. We have a couple of tuitioned-in students into our special education programs. We have the pre-K tuition also, where students that are not special ed are for that.
And that pays for a pre-K teacher?
A portion of a pre-K teacher, and yes. And a portions of special education teachers who are doing other tuition students.
And then the kindergarten tuition pays for 3 staff?
This year it is.
Because we added 1-to-1?
Right.
So, total picture is a 1% increase takes your budget from this year to a budget of next year of $27,417,965. The level services are a 2.6% increase, $27,864,080. Supporting the identified needs we've gone through tonight takes it to a 3.8% increase to $28,189,090. Those are the different levels we've presented in this budget. You still have, obviously, this meeting to discuss, talk about it, and think about for our meeting on February 24th, what that final vote may be in terms of presenting a proposal to appropriations. Once we've done that, then we will submit it to appropriations on the 25th, and we are meeting with the Appropriations Committee on February 27th. Town budget hearing is being moved back, so it's closer to town meeting on May 21st. I don't have the exact date for the budget hearing, but it used to be that first Monday in April. Now I believe it's going to be 2 weeks closer to the middle of April.
Pretty comprehensive.
Yes, it is.
Yeah.
It'll be interesting here. I think some more discussions to come.
We're still early in the
Let's
process.
see what we can do.
Yeah, very well. We're best.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
That's a lot of information.
Very good, very good.
Okay, we are not going to act on 6.1 this evening, so we will move right along to, correct, required language for policy JICFB.
Okay, in your package, you have the full policy JICFB. This is one that we had put into place back actually in the fall of 2010. Excuse me. This year, if you turn to the second page in your packet, we are required to add new language to, actually it's on the third page in your packet, to the area that talks about a perpetrator. And specifically, the new language is around adding into the definition of a perpetrator that it can be a school staff member. So as you see there in italicized and bold print, you have a perpetrator is a student or a member of the school staff, including but not limited to an educator, administrator, school nurse, cafeteria worker, custodian, bus driver, athletic coach, advisor to an extracurricular activity, or a paraprofessional who engages in bullying or retaliation.
That's the only thing being added?
That's the only thing that's being
Yeah,
added.
there was a lot of bullet.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
The bold throughout the policy itself actually is just to bring out certain things such as protection against retaliation. That was something that we felt, and the Office of Civil Rights felt, that should be very present in people's minds as they're reading this policy.
Do we have to have a second reading on this, Mr.
We do. It is. So
this should be the first reading.
Although it is, we did approve the actual.
Yeah, we can waive the second reading.
Oh, okay.
I mean, it's not, we don't have a
It's
policy.
not a new policy.
Right, we don't have a policy that governs anything that says we have to have two
I'm
readings.
okay with doing it. Yeah,
That's fine.
Yeah.
Thank you for asking though, yes. No.
I move that we accept policy JICFB with the latest update.
Okay, motion made and seconded. Any other discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, no. Motion carries 4-0. Next up, we have the annual Rays of Hope request for use of the high school on Sunday, October 19th, 2014, from 8 a.m. to 1 p.m. That's use of the high school parking lot. Same as every year. So.
Generally, we try to, we alert, if it's approved here, we alert rec and athletics to try to stay away from games on that day.
Okay.
Okay, I'll move to allow the Rays of Hope walk on September 19th, on October 19th, 2014, the use of the East Long Meadow High School parking lot from 8 a.m. to 1 p.m.
Second that.
Motion made and seconded. Any other discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, no. Motion carries 4-0. You notify Mr. Westcott?
Very well.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Next item, I think the next series of items, no, actually, the next item, I apologize, is discussion of the National School Board Association National Conference.
Yeah, I went to, I approached Gordon about it a couple of weeks ago about attending the National Conference, which is being held this year from April 5th through April 7th in New Orleans. And the reason I did this is a number of my colleagues in MASC will be attending, so it was just kind of brought to my attention, and I hadn't been to a national conference. I think it was 5 years ago. I went to San Francisco with my MASC colleagues, so it was brought to my attention again that maybe it would be a good idea to attend. And I received a text from Mr. Thompson, which I appreciate, so I started doing some research on the NSBA website. And just to give you guys a brief overview of what could be happening. The conference session, the conference is actually broken into 6 areas of focus, which are legal and legislative advocacy, governance and executive leadership, innovations in district management, professional and personal development, school board/superintendent partnerships, student achievement, and accountability. Within these sessions, there are a number of breakout sessions throughout the conference. And I've just listed a few of something that, the things that caught my eye. Now, keep in mind, I looked at this on Friday and I looked again at it today, so it is constantly being populated, time slots are being filled up, so this is by no means a complete list yet. And some of the areas of interest would be like the best of both digital learning worlds, cloud computing, and BYO. Leveraging data for action, improvement, and accountability. We just talked about that in our budget, okay? Digital citizenship in the age of the Common Core, something that we're going to be talking about in the near future. Something that really caught my eye, how to deal with negative people and keep from becoming negative yourself. I think a little bit expanding on what you presented at MASC. Security in our schools. I think everybody is on board with security in our schools. And those are just a sample of some of the stuff that caught my eye. And it's always, I find, helpful in the past to connect with colleagues from across the country to see how they're doing, bring back best practices. Among the keynote speakers are Thomas L. Friedman, who authored The World is Flat. This guy is also a columnist for the New York Times. I've read some of his works, and he's very, very knowledgeable in what in moving education forward. Sir Ken Robinson, who was an internationally known leader in development of education, creativity, and innovation. That one caught my eye. And it's just, again, they're still populating these things. So this is the information I have at this point. And, I leave it to your discretion on, basically, what you want,
So does this need a motion for?
Yes.
It does? Yeah. I make a motion that we charge Mr. William Fonseca to attend the NSBA National Conference April 5th through the 7th.
And I'll second it.
Okay, motion made and seconded. Any further discussion? Only thing I might ask is if it's approved, that when you get back, maybe have a debrief for all of us.
Absolutely.
Fantastic.
But I will, as I get more information, I'll just either shoot you guys an email or, we'll bring it back up and throw it on the agenda, because it is still 2 months away.
Right. Okay, great, thank you. All in favor of the motion, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. You're going to abstain from that, Bill, maybe?
Yes, I am.
Okay, so the motion carries 3-0. Thank you. All right, with one abstention. All right, moving right along, we have a grant.
We do. We have actually a few grants to look at this evening. The first one is a grant that Meadowbrook School put in for, and it's called the STARS Residency Grant. And the acronym for STARS is Students and Teachers Working with Artists, Scientists, and Scholars. And so Meadowbrook put in for this grant, and they will be receiving, I think, $5,000 to start to build and augment an outdoor classroom. And they'll be having a skilled naturalist from the Hitchcock Center up in Amherst to come help with this program and start to connect this outdoor classroom and some of the programming that this skilled naturalist will be able to bring to Meadowbrook around life science. So this is a grant that they put in for and have been awarded, and wanted to make sure that the school committee not only was aware, but formally accepts the grant.
Okay, thank you.
I move that we accept the Mass Cultural Council STARS Residency Grant for Meadowbrook School.
Excellent.
I'll second.
Made and seconded. Any other discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, no. Motion carries 4-0. ED grants.
Okay, well, going back to committee communications, we talked a little bit about the E-Leaf dinner and celebration, which is coming up this weekend. We are actually going to be receiving on that, or at that dinner, 14 grants totaling $20,000 that will be coming into really all 5 buildings. And so it's, each grant is highlighted on the spreadsheet that's in your packet, and how it's broken down into what school and actually individuals put in for that grant. And all of those individuals will be recognized at the dinner on this Saturday. This will be a formal recognition and acceptance by the school committee of this, these mini grants from ELIF.
Neat. Some great grants there.
Really are.
Yeah.
Great creativity.
Yes. And ELIF, with these mini grants, really gives us the opportunity, our teachers probably more so than the central office or we, but they have a chance to continue to be creative in their thinking in terms of how they want to support or structure the learning environment for their students. They can get a mini grant and start to go in that direction, and if it's something that really takes off, then the district can start to look at it and say, you know, we may want to expand this across the district, and then look at it in their budget development.
Okay.
I move that we accept the ELEF grant for all 5 schools.
Thank you. Motion made and seconded. Any other discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. Motion carries 4-0. And finally,
Okay, the final item in your packet is actually a gift from the Dolcinos family to Meadowbrook School, which is quite gracious and generous. It's a $500 donation to Meadowbrook to be used for supplies in one specific room in the Meadowbrook School, around the library and health room, or 2 rooms there, library and health. And I believe that the gift from the Dolcinos family would be also matched probably from one of the employers, so it could be up to $1,000. So it's recognition of that gift, and it's informal acceptance of that gift.
That's a wonderful first paragraph.
Sure is.
You know,
Sure is.
creating a safe learning environment, appreciate the staff's professionalism and compassion.
Right.
Those are wonderful words to hear.
This is pretty incredible. Not only a letter of support for all that Meadowbrook does, but to then offer a gift of $500 is pretty incredible.
Well, I definitely move that we accept this wonderful gift from the Dolcinos family to the Meadowbrook School.
I'll second.
motion made and seconded. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, no. Motion carries 4-0. All right, did you have anything? I know you missed the beginning of the meeting. Did you have anything you wanted to mention this evening?
I did, actually.
Okay.
I'm
Would you like to do that?
I was having car trouble.
Oh, no. Did you get it straightened out?
Yes,
Okay.
sorry about that.
No problem.
Nothing at all.
Well.
We're glad you're here and safe.
Oh, thank you, me too, it was a little scary. So the senior semi-formal was on January 25th, and I was hoping I'd be able to say that when explaining it was Mr. Page and Mr. Kelly were here because they were there as well. Thought maybe they just would have had, guess not. The GSA is having a movie night on Friday. I'm going. They're showing First Being Wallflower. And they're taking pretty good measures in order to not have people sneak into the basketball game because they're signing people up beforehand, so they have a running list of who's going to the movie, so that they can't get in saying they're going to the movie, but actually.
Small gym?
I'm not really sure what space they're using, but so that's going to be on Friday. And the National Honor Society is doing Penny Wars this week, raising money for progeria research. Oh, I had one more thing too. Can't remember it. 3's a good number.
Yeah.
Thank you for asking.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, with that, I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Motion made
Second.
and seconded. Any other discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, no. Motion carries 4-0. Thank you and good night.
Will we off?